So, you want to pick larger tires that fit and know they'll fit before you take a risk and buy the tires. In today's video, we're sharing an online calculator into which you measure your vehicle and plug a few numbers in. This tool then tells you whether your tires will fit or not. I used this tool to buy tires that I knew would fit my off-road Mini Cooper so that I wouldn't have to deal with headaches, problems, and returns. As great as unnecessarily long introductions are, let's hop right in. Write down your original tire size. It's available on the side of your tires. There are two methods of measuring tires. There's imperial and metric, and we use metric in this video. The first number is width and the second number is height as a proportion of the width. If you use imperial, the first number is the tire diameter and the second number is the tire width. For both methods of measurement, the third number is rim diameter in inches. If you're just changing your tires, measure your metal rim's width. You will need to make sure that the larger tires fit your old metal rim. That's a detail some people sometimes overlook. Last but not least, look up your original rim offset. There's a more technical definition, but for our purposes, it's basically how far in or out the wheel is mounted on the hub. If you have OEM, original wheels on the vehicle, you can enter your make, model, year, and they will provide the offset for you. If you can't find this, no biggie, you can use 0 for now, but you might have to experiment with wheel spacers later on if you can't find this information. The two numbers I looked at are wheel well clearance and suspension clearance. For wheel well clearance, we measure the front and rear tires and see how close the wheel well comes at any point. We also take care to turn the wheels all the way left and all the way right and measure for the smallest number. Use the smallest of all measurements for wheel well clearance. I ended up coming the closest on the rear wheel well. For suspension clearance, we measure the closest the suspension comes to contact with the tire. Notice the whole suspension will compress, so this measurement won't change. The spring compresses and moves the whole thing up and down, but the tire will always be at this distance from the bottom suspension hat we see here that holds the spring.
My problems will stem from the proximity of the strut cap, or whatever you call it, to the tire here, but this is going to be my problem. Since the tire spins, or when it turns left and right, it will not be getting closer to this measurement. So that's a good thing.
Fender clearance is the space between the vehicle's fender and tire. If you have a lower car, this number is important because when the suspension spring is fully compressed, the tire will move up and possibly hit the fender. On this lifted Mini, it's not particularly important because of the way the wheel well is designed. We can use the wheel well number because the fender doesn't go down by much. We're looking at the circular space around the tire that's available to us to use for a bigger tire. And because we have a lift kit installed and the measurements that are going to impact us the most are proximity to the suspension and wheel wells. That being said, you can park your vehicle on a curb with one wheel to get a close measurement of how close the original tire comes to the fender. For just fitting larger tires, I didn't find scrub radius to be a particularly important number to measure, but I could be wrong, and further reading is available online about scrub radius. Feel free to check the comments and the description for further reading. Once I measured everything, and knowing I had a metric system and knowing I wanted to go with wider tires for more stability and grip, I saw that my limiting factor would be the spacing between the suspension and tire. It was barely 10 millimeters between the tire and strut. Therefore, I knew I would need spacers if I wanted to go wider. The Mini had about 20 millimeters of space in the front before the tire started to poke, and 20 in the back. So I went with 15 millimeter spacers to create a slightly more pronounced look without having the tires poke out too much, if at all. I looked up the hub-centric bore and purchased longer bolts as well. A full video walkthrough will be available on this channel on how to purchase spacers and what measurements you need. The website we go to is wheelsize.com. We enter the make, year, model, and get the original rim sizes. Then, we go to the tire calculator tool and put those in. Knowing we're working with metric, I first played with the second number of the tire size measurement, which is going with taller tires only, instead of wider. So, my original tires were 195, 55, 16, which works out to roughly 24 inches in diameter. The original sidewall height was 107 millimeters. I increased the second number, which is an aspect of the width, so went from 55 to 60, where the pros are that it's less risky, least risk of suspension rub, and the cons were that it looks less impressive and ride-wise, there's less grip than a 205 width. The sidewall height was great at 117mm. I went up to a 195, still at the same width tire, but then a 65 aspect ratio for the same pros, but that's still not a 205 wide tire. I noticed a sidewall height of 127mm and everything cleared and wanted to go wider. Seeing there were no problems, I entered 205 for the width and went with 60 for the height. So not only is the tire wider, but the height is a larger percentage of the larger value at 60, so that results in a 26-inch tire. It's more impressive visually, fills out the wheel well, but there's more risk of hitting the top, but we fixed that with the lift kit. And there would have been risk of rubbing on the suspension, but we fixed that with the 15mm spacers. The sidewall was 123mm, which was great. I decided to not go any bigger and took the win of getting a wider, decently bigger tire, but not risking having to cut wheel well liners or any of the body to get the tires to fit, and still leave room for the tire to go up and down and not hit the fender as we go over bumps. I used Tire Rack to buy my tires. I've liked buying from them. I'm not sponsored by them, but won't say no if you guys see this. They have quick shipping and fair prices. 3 days later, my tires were here. Before I had a local tire shop mount and balance the new tires, I recommend taking the wheels off yourself and clean them off on the inside of the rim, so that when they stick the weights on, the weights don't quickly fall off. I had that issue happen to me when I took the Boxster in and they didn't bother cleaning the wheels, and after a week or two the wheels were shaking again. Lesson learned. I cleaned my rims, went to the local tire shop, and had the new tires installed and balanced. I removed the wheels at home and installed the wheels at home, and torqued the wheels to 103 foot-pounds. I'm satisfied with the result. The scope of this video was to share the process of picking larger tires without replacing the original rims. See the Mini Cooper playlist for maintenance and mild off-road build videos. In the next few videos, we'll cover how it drives and handles with a lift kit, so be sure to join the channel and subscribe so you don't miss those. Thanks for watching.